Guys, it's Hook here. Today I'm going to show you how you can easily complete Domain 10 and unlock the Mod Runner trophy/achievement in the new Assassin's Creed DLC update. And as usual, I'm going to be showing how to do this in the easiest possible way with no skill required, because that's what I needed to do to get it done. The two most important aspects of getting Domain 10 done are your level and your build. To successfully complete any particular domain, your character will need to be at the level of that domain, or perhaps a level or two below it, depending on your build. Unfortunately, this does mean in order to complete the last three domains, 8, 9, and 10, you do need to be in the mid to high 90s at a minimum, otherwise you're just going to die pretty much instantly. I have some good XP farming tips at the end of the video, so stick around for those if you do need to level up. Okay, let's talk about the build that I'm using to get this done. This build focuses on ridiculously high damage, delivered via postured attacks, making enemies vulnerable all of the time, and having all of the equipment, masteries, and exploit points complementing each other to push that damage even higher. We are going to be using Yasuki for this, and the core of this is his long katana, the Blade of Yumminess. You can see we get a huge damage boost at the expense of not being able to use any abilities, but fear not, we use that to our advantage a little bit later. And we're going to be using sheathed attacks all of the time exclusively because they are postured and make enemies vulnerable all of the time. Make sure to pair this up with a particular skill in the katana tree. We'll cover that shortly. You get this weapon by completing the 12 glyphs. There's a whole bunch of great guides out there on how to do that. Go look those up if you haven't got this blade already. And you will want to do this before you complete the Black Cross final mission, because it does appear that that glyph door permanently closes after you complete that quest. For the helmet, we're using the Destroyer Samurai helmet. This helmet gives us a plus 10 damage boost for every 10% of health we're missing. So if you're at half health in the middle of a combat, you're going to be getting a 50% damage boost because of it. And I've engraved it with a fairly significant critical chance boost with posture attacks, which again are the only attacks we're going to use via the Blade of Yumminess. You get this helmet fairly early in the game via Yasuki's objective board. Next up is the armor of the legendary samurai. This gives us constant healing throughout the domains outside of having to use rations. And it's been engraved with a good chance to avoid projectiles. This is actually fairly important because often when you're in combat, there's going to be an archer or similar shooting at you. You will effectively avoid half of those shots with this item. You find this armor in a legendary chest at a fort at this location on the right side of the map. And for the amulet, we're using Amaratu's Blessing. This one's interesting. It gives us a plus 10 damage boost per unused ability slot. And since we can't use any abilities because we're using the Blade of Yumminess, I make sure that I've unassigned all my abilities so we always have 4 unused ability slots. Additionally, I engraved it with a plus 50% damage on the next hit after a kill. We do a fair amount of killing in each of these domains, so we're going to be getting this plus 50 damage boost a lot. This amulet's available pretty early in the game, inside a cave at this location. So go get that if you don't have it already, and you'll complete your equipment setup. Alright, let's quickly talk about some of the important mastery areas to complement that build. Since I'm only using the one weapon, I'm going to have most of my mastery points in the katana. You will want to make sure you have these ones mastered, because this is what's driving those sheathed attacks, which in turn turns every attack into a postured attack, which in turn makes every enemy vulnerable. And on that note, don't neglect those other weapon trees, even though we're not using those weapons at all, because they have some global passives in there that you can put some points to, which I think, help generally whether you're using that weapon or not. Since you're in the end game anyway, you've probably got most of the knowledge ranks, masteries all sorted out, but I do just want to cover a couple of important ones that specifically complement the build we got. The first of which is damaged with postured attack. Every attack we do is going to be postured via the sheathed attack. So make sure this one's maxed out. The next two, damage with melee weapons and damage generally, are important. You want to max those out. And we want to max out damage to vulnerable enemies, because almost every one of our enemies is going to be vulnerable because we hit them with a postured attack. And then both critical chance and critical damage, you want to max those ones out too. And then finally, make sure you maxed out damage on the next hit after a kill. Again, we do a bunch of killing in these domains. Now finally, let's talk about Mod's export tree. You will earn a bunch of these points throughout your run, especially if you're leveling up, but there's really only a couple in here that really help us, and they're really important to make sure you get. The first one to make sure you get is re-roll a modifier. As you know, domains have a series of penalties and bonuses randomly applied to them, and there's some of those that we really want to avoid, and so we re-roll those away with this ability. Obviously, you want to bump up your health and your critical chance and your critical damage, all of those, they're obvious. There's also a few here that I don't put any points into, mostly because they're around abilities, cooldowns, or afflictions, none of which we're using in this build, so I didn't put any points into them. Okay, so let's take a look at my final Domain 10 run, which uses this build and all of the stuff surrounding it. Most of this run's going to be sped up, but I will slow down at certain points to highlight aspects of the build or aspects of the run that I think are important. As soon as the run's generated, I can already see I don't like the True Assassin modifier. I don't want the enemies taking 90% reduced damage, so we're going to re-roll that one. I also really don't like having extra enemies, so we're going to keep re-rolling until we finally land on Frostbite. This one's okay. It doesn't do any damage to you as you run through. It just slows you down, so I'm going to leave that one. Note that this one's completely neutral for us. We don't use any abilities, so I'm just going to leave that one alone. Alright, that's enough re-rolling. We're just going to do the run now. Okay, so the way combat works with this build, it's very simple. You're going to hold the left bumper and attack with the right trigger. That's literally all I do these entire run. Hold the left bumper, spam the right trigger, and mix in some dodging when I need to get out of harm's way. You do want to make sure you don't get surrounded by enemies, because you will fairly quickly die no matter what your build is when that happens. And then get back to spamming that sheathed postured attack. And as you can see, we one or two shot most normal enemies, and we fairly quickly get through the mini boss, no problem. Now here's a tip I think is pretty important, especially on these higher domain runs. You want to make a save. The game does autosave for you, but I found it to be really inconsistent about when it does it or even if it does it, so make a save yourself. Sometimes it claims it won't let you make a save. That's alright, just leave it a few seconds, then try again. I show that a little bit later. Okay, on to the next mini-boss. Again, we get through this mini-boss in only a handful of hits and we're done. And because they're vulnerable almost all the time because of our attacks, once you get one hit in, they can't hit you back. Alright, time to make another save. I'm waiting for the anonymous notification since it won't let you save in combat. And here's a case where it won't let me save even though I should be able to save. So I'm just going to wait a few seconds and then try again. And this time it lets me save. Alright, on to the third mini-boss. Note here, I do actually die, and I was saved by the cheat death exploit in the exploit tree. And this was a case where, again, I got surrounded by more than one enemy and wasn't paying attention, so be careful of that. We've lost most of our health at this point, so again we're getting a massive damage boost because of it, because of the equipment. And down goes that third mini-boss. Right, off to find number 4. Right, well he was a little annoying, but we got him done. On to the final boss fight. This leads to an observation, I think, that some of the hardest parts of these domains using Yasuki are the parkour elements and not the combat elements. The number of times I fell off something or missed a jump, which I'm sure is due to my extreme lack of skill and not the jankiness of Yasuki's parkour, but either way it was really annoying. Right, so here we are in the final boss arena. Before you walk in, you want to make another save. Alright, so I got the 4-wave K-pop band enemy for this boss fight. The combat here is exactly the same as it was for the rest of the domain. We're going to spam that sheathed postured attack, do it heaps of damage, and we're just going to make sure we dodge out of the way so we don't get surrounded by enemies. One interesting thing to note though is when you're in the animation of finishing an enemy, you do seem to be immune from attacks from any other enemies that happen to be surrounding you. Probably don't rely on that though, so just dodge out of the way if you think there's enemies around you. Again, I'm just holding down the left bumper and spamming the right trigger. That's all I'm doing. I'm not trying to time the parries, which as you know is next to impossible on Nightmare mode. I'm not even trying to time the dodges, I'm just dodging to get out of the way. And because I can't use any abilities and I don't have any assigned, I don't even have to worry about which ability to use and when to use it. This is the world's simplest build. So I do get in a little bit of trouble here with the 4 and then get me down fairly low on health, so I'm just dodging away to heal up and then wait for my chance to come back in with one of our devastating attacks. And after you've dealt with this final boss, you too will have unlocked the Mod Runner trophy/achievement. So if you're struggling with these domains, go try this build out. It'll help. Now, if you need to do some leveling up to attack those higher level domains, then these are the 4 things that I did to level up as quick as possible. Number 1 was farming a domain that I'd already done. So for example, if I just unlocked domain level 7, then I farmed domain level 6. These provide you with a large amount of XP for each run, and you get a large amount of mod coin for each run, which you need for the exploit tree anyway. Number 2, I also did a lot of corrupted castles. The XP is good, it's not great, but it's good, and you get tokens that you'll need to do the domains anyway. So they're a good pairing. Number 3 was story missions. I was at the end of my first New Game Plus doing these domains, but I still had a few story missions left over, so I just went and did as many of those as I could. Also, I had not done Awaji in my New Game Plus, so I went and did that quest. It was very quick to do when you've got this build on Yaski, and that got me a bunch of XP fairly quickly. And then the final tip, which I didn't actually use, but if you're out of XP options, you can always start a New Game Plus. Obviously though, if you do this, you'll have to play through at least until you unlock Yaski's full abilities, because you need him to do these domains. And there you have it guys, that's how you can easily complete Domain 10 and unlock the Mod Runner trophy/achievement. Hope that helps, hope it was useful, and I'll see you in the next one.